everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Give 'em Heck podcast. This is your host, Penny. I'm Brian, and we want to thank everybody who's coming back from our prior videos. We're very happy to see you again, and welcome any new viewers for our encouragement and hope and change. So what are we talking about today?
Well, we have another good podcast. Hoping that all of you are gleaning something from these podcasts. Our hope, obviously, is that it's helping you to change, find the right support, and to take that extra jump that you have to take in your life to change it, to get to where you want to be. And again, I just want to say share, like, and subscribe, turn on your notifications. And please do that because it not only helps to get our podcast out there, but it helps others to find our podcast so that, you know, that's the thing. We want to reach people to help them.
Yeah, we don't mean to seem so robotic when we say that, because a lot of YouTubers are like, like, comment, subscribe. We genuinely want to be real with this.
Yes.
We want to bring people to a place where they've been given a different perspective on life, a different showing. Like, it's not just a matter of being like, robotics and, you can change. You just got to put the effort. No. We want to be real with this.
Right.
We've seen the monotony with encouragement, people who share encouragement, and it's not personal.
Right.
You can't get anywhere with it because we care about you.
Right.
You're family to us. We want to see you guys be lifted up. We want to see encouragement in our comments and people telling us, even in real life.
Yes.
Because we've had people that have done that. People who come up to us and have told us that our podcast has helped them, and we're thankful for that. We want to continue with that.
Yeah, that's the whole reason why we did this, was to not only help us to grow and find change, but also, like you said, Brian, be real.
Exactly.
That's the thing. People are tired of fake.
Yeah.
And people know fake. We're hoping that we can take our real life situations, and I've said this before, we haven't arrived. We're still learning, and that's life, But we're hoping that by bringing this, we let you know that with the things that we've been through, that it gives you a different outlook, a different perspective. Not that what we do is always right or the things that we say.
No, we're human. We make mistakes.
And
we're not sitting here as the beacons of absolute perfection.
Because we haven't made it.
No.
So don't think that we have not. We're still, moving and working through our issues too. But again, it's a community that we want to reach others to be, helpful. And we want to encourage encouragement. And so if you can share, like, subscribe, send your comments. Let us know if there's something that you want to talk about. It's not always about us and what we want to talk about. That's not what this is about. Yeah. It's reaching the masses to see what we can do to all work together to better ourselves, and that's what we want. And the other thing I want to let people know before we get into our podcast tonight is we are on other platforms. So just to let you know, we are obviously on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple. So there are other ways that you can listen to us, just to let you know if you don't have certain ones, that you can find us in different areas. So
yeah, if you find us on one particular platform and you want to try and find us on another one, we're under the same name.
Right.
We're not somewhere.
No.
There's no numbers in our name. It's just give them heck.
Same everywhere.
Same everywhere.
Give everybody heck. The good heck.
The good kind.
The good kind. Right. So again, I'll start off with our disclaimer that we're not doctors, psychologists, or counselors. We're not giving any medical or psychological advice. We're just simply here to discuss real life situations, to give hope, encouragement, and hopefully instill change, to let you know that we can do it and it can happen. Mm-hmm. So in our last episode, we talked about purpose and destiny. And apparently this is our 5th episode, but out of all of them, I will say that our last episode was one that I really got a lot of feedback from. And I think it's because people want to know not only that they can change their lives, but that they have a purpose. I mean...
Yeah, with the small amount of people that have said stuff to us, it just shows that there's not enough of what we're doing.
Right.
Again, not patting ourselves on the back and thinking that we're doing the greatest thing out of everybody, because I'm sure there's other podcasters who do encourage, hope and change. But like for us personally, it's interesting to see how many people really, really need this stuff.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And it gives them a different perspective.
Yeah.
You know, like, what does it mean to have purpose? What does it mean to have destiny? And everybody has their own outlook on life because life has treated everybody differently. And it is about perspective, you know, and the way you handle your situations, what that looks like. Because, like, even you and I, Brian, the way you handle a situation may not be the way I would handle a situation.
Yeah.
You know, it just depends on, you know, where you're at and what you're willing to do in those situations.
That's a good dynamic for people too, if you think about it, because, you know, just because two people are dealing with the same situation, the way one person handles it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing. You know how there's people that get upset when they see you react a certain way. Sometimes you can feed off of that and be like, that's a different perspective. Let me try and look at it that way. And it can help, like, not necessarily change your outlook, but be like, that's an interesting way to respond to this. Maybe I can learn from it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because
you're learning from the person and the situation
right.
at the same time.
And because everybody's different, you might handle that situation a little bit differently. And it's not right, wrong, or bad. It gives somebody a different perspective to look at it and say, I never thought of it that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and now maybe that might be just that little extra thing that they need to make them say, okay, you know what, for me, it's time. If they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I have to do it the way they did, but they did it. So I can. So with that being said, it is our hope that in our last episode with Purpose and Destiny, that we did encourage you to move forward. And again, whatever that looks like for you. But although that is very true, today we're going to take a look at everything that we've talked about. This is going to be a little bit different podcast. And I think this might end up being a twofer because it might get a little lengthy. And of course, we don't want to keep you here all night. So I'm thinking it's probably going to be a part 2, but we'll see where we end up. So the things that we've talked about, I want to bring together, things that we've hoped for, maybe we've learned from, and things that we have focused on. Maybe we can bring all those things together and bring some change to us. So tonight our podcast is called Time Has a Way.
Ooh.
I know we're always talking about like purpose versus destiny, making a difference versus being the difference. You know, we've talked about, what was the other one we had? Existing versus living. But tonight I want to talk about Time Has a Way. And the reason I brought that up is because with everything that we have talked about, this kind of meshes everything together. Does that make sense?
Almost like a summary.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's like a summary of everything that we've talked about. And that is that time, whether you love it or hate it, whether it's your friend or your foe, one thing is always true. It's always there. You may not be able to change it, but you can definitely learn from it. So I guess I'll start it off with this, Brian, is that I'll mention my dad again. One thing he always said was, time has a way. And I remember one time I was in this situation where I felt like there was nothing more I could do. I've done everything I could to make the situation better. This depended a lot on also what the other person was going to do. And again, we've mentioned before that we don't have control over other people, and that's okay. We shouldn't. But because of that, I was at a standstill. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and I said, I just don't know what else to do. And like I've said to you guys before, I've talked to my dad a lot because he was great with giving advice. And I said, what do I do at this point? And all he said was this. He said, time has a way of taking care of a lot of things. And that was basically his way of saying, stop. It's enough. Just let it play out. Whatever will be, will be. And I think sometimes with everything that we have learned in our last 4 podcasts, that sometimes that's where we have to find ourselves.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing else. So I guess I'll ask you this question, Brian. What do you think it means when I say to you, time has a way?
Well, I've used that same, that same saying, to my friends, and even repeating it in my own head when bad things happen. And the way I've always interpreted it is kind of like how you just described it. It's kind of just like, stop trying to take control, because some things are just out of it. Some things are just not in your control.
Yep.
And letting time deal with it is more of like me metaphorically surrendering.
Ooh.
Like just saying, you know what? No matter what I do, the situation is going to happen.
Yep.
Just let it play out.
Yep.
Because sometimes you trying to interfere with it can make it worse.
That's true.
Sometimes, not all the time.
Not all the
obviously.
time.
But like in certain situations, those situations that are really, really far out of your control, sometimes it's better to just let time deal with it.
Yep. Yep. And I think that that's what Dad was trying to tell me in that situation. And he knew my situation, of course. But I think, in his wisdom, being much older than me, he looked at that situation from an outside source person, looking as an outsider. He probably said, thinking that, just let it be, because there's nothing more. And sometimes you do hit that wall. And is that okay?
It has to be. And I think it can be an encouragement to help you change your outlook on every situation. Because it's more of like an understanding, it's a wisdom of putting yourself in a position where you're like, whether the situation is in your control or not, it's sometimes you just got to go with the flow. Let things play out. Have peace in the middle of the storm. And letting time sort itself out.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a time for everything.
Well, it's like I told my friend who's dealing with a problem right now. It's like I asked him, I was like, what is you freaking out about it, going to do? What's it doing for you? Like, I didn't genuinely say that in a way of like, why are you freaking out? Stop it.
Right.
Like I wasn't trying to tell him. I was trying to tell him, like, genuinely, what is you freaking out right now? How is that helping you?
Right.
And she stopped and she was like, I guess it really isn't. Because what's coming is going to happen regardless.
Exactly.
And I said, what you need to do is stop focusing on the storm around you and focus on the handful of people that are wrapped around you.
Right. Right. Yeah. And believe it or not, sometimes the storm, once you step away from it, a couple things can come from it. You might learn that it's not as bad as you thought.
Yep.
But even if it wasn't, maybe it is still bad, but maybe in the long run, you stepping away from that and letting time take care of it, it can turn out for your good. It doesn't always mean it's going to continue to be bad and turn out to be worse. It could actually be the best thing that ever happened for you.
Well, I think every bad situation in some way, shape, or form can help you become a better person. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because sometimes
within
it forces
context,
you.
I understand that there are people that are going through much worse than what you and I have gone through. But at the end of the day, you still have, people and yourself to rely on.
Yeah.
You're not as defenseless as one might think.
Right. Because sometimes it forces you to be that person that maybe you don't want to be, but you have to be.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's change.
Yeah.
And change can be good.
Yeah.
So I want to look at time as a foe. So what is involved in that? So some things I thought about was there's never enough of it.
Yeah.
My dad would always say, there's never enough of it, but sometimes time is all you have. It's just the way it is, right? It seems to work against you. Now, when I say that, I said seems to. Sometimes it's not working against you. And sometimes it always seems to take from you. Because where you feel that there is never enough time, you're always in this mode of trying to catch up, or you're always trying to stay ahead of the problem. Well, sometimes you can't, because it's not about time. It's really the fact that maybe that issue that you're dealing with is just what it is.
Yeah.
And the only thing that's going to help that situation is time. Does that make sense?
I think also too, in regards to time, it's not really so much the amount of time you may or may not have. I think it's all in how you spend that time too.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it can be to your benefit, it can be to your detriment.
Like one of my friends always told me, all it takes is 1 second to mess things up.
Isn't that the truth?
A lot can happen in 1 minute. You know, and 1 second is all it needs to change something. Now, he of course used it in a negative context, but I challenged him and said it can also take 1 second to change something around.
Right, exactly.
See, time is neutral. It can work against you, it can work with you, and I think that's all a matter of perspective.
Exactly, and that's why I was saying tonight we're talking about time being your foe and time being your friend. Because like you said, Brian, I think a lot of life deals with perspective and choice. And perspective is one thing because that can really come down to an individual stance.
Yeah, because obviously time in situations is different for everybody. Like if you're going through something right now that may not directly affect me, the only thing that you're sharing with me is the moment. I'm not sharing the situation.
Right, because you're not dealing with the feelings, you're not dealing with the emotions, you're not dealing with the issue head on.
Yeah.
It's not affecting you like it's going to affect me.
Yeah.
Whether that's short term or long term, I'm the one at the end of the day that is dealing with it.
Yeah.
You know, to a very personal level. You know what I mean? So let's look at time as a friend, what that's involved in. Because I like to look at it more from a positive angle. It can bring reflection to our lives. It can bring change, but it can also bring healing. So when you look at it as a foe or a friend, Brian, what do you think? There are some things we can glean from either.
I think, see, I'm very, I don't want to say neutral. So I'm going to use, like, in my head, I'm going to use personal experiences when I've considered time a friend or a foe. I think it's more along the lines of not so much if I've determined it to be a negative or a positive, you know, friend or foe. I've used it in the sense of like I kind of like said to you earlier, like it's all a matter of perspective. I've used it as a start in the short term and work my way into long term.
Okay.
As an enemy, and I'll you know, for the sake of the audience, I will differentiate the best that I personally can. But the way I see it as an enemy is that sometimes I feel, at least in my experiences, that some things go by too fast. Because when a situation goes wrong, it's almost like there's not enough time to adjust myself. And then the long term is, I think, of how I can act from that moment to the next moment.
That's good.
So it's almost like it's like a roller coaster going down and then working its way back up. It's fast at first and then it slowly goes up. Because I've always had when people have used the time expression for me, I've always thought of it as not so much, is it a friend or a foe? I've always been referred to as like time is an overall healer. Time heals all wounds.
True.
Wounds might scar, but that skin becomes tougher.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And
that's the best way I can put it, because I've never really, it's more of a neutral ground, like I said.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So for you, it's not really a foe, it's not really a friend, it's kind of middle ground. So you kind of look at it like, so how do I handle it from here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, it can be a very hard thing to adjust to, but once I fully understand everything, like I said, it's like that roller coaster going up slowly. It's slow, but that roller coaster's locked in. It ain't going to go backwards, you know?
Yeah, because you can think of it this way. When you feel like you don't have enough of it, in that situation, you might feel like you want to fix the situation and you want it fixed right now. But the more you ride the ride, you figure out, well, maybe there's too much time. the ride has slowed down because now you feel like there's nothing I can do.
Well, I think it also depends too on how a person sees, like I said, it's perspective. So it's almost like a person can think to themselves, how much do I have to lose? And what do I have to gain within that time frame? Because a lot of times, and I think a lot of people watching and listening could probably equate to this, but it's like, or I'm sorry, not equate, relate. A lot of times when things happen fast, people are more reactive than they are like logical.
Right.
You know, some people it's worse than others, but I think generally speaking, when a bad thing happens, people react.
Yep.
And I think that's what makes it feel like there's not enough time to fix it. It's because it's a very reactive moment.
True. And you think in that time, because you feel like there's not enough time and you react, you think maybe you're doing the right thing, but in the long term, maybe you're making the situation worse.
Yeah.
So maybe then you look at it, time can end up being your friend, because then it makes you back up a little bit and you slow down. And now you look at it at a time of reflection. And I think that that's where my dad was trying to come from in that situation, is he wanted me to step back from it and say, okay, you need some time to breathe on this.
Yeah.
You know, now I want you to look at it from a different perspective, from a different angle, and reflect on it differently. And I think in that, yes, it brings change, and that's good, but it also gives you the opportunity to heal.
Sometimes even healing a little bit can help.
Oh yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, and when I say healing, I mean like I said, that small amount of time. It's like reaching the bottom of that roller coaster. It's abrupt and then it goes up slow. It's almost like that little bit of reprieve can be like, okay, let's stop and think.
Yeah.
Stop and heal from what happened.
Yeah. And sometimes even that slow ride of realizing that time can be your friend, that can be an extremely slow ride. Because depending on what you're coming out of, maybe you feel when you step back, yeah, I've made all the right changes. I feel like I'm in a good place. Maybe I haven't made all the changes, but where I am right now, it's helping me to heal, but that healing may take a while.
Oh yeah.
And that's okay.
Healing always takes time. And in at least in my experiences, I can sit here and tell you that sometimes that moment of stillness, you know, when it feels like time isn't moving, can really help you gain perspective on yourself. Makes you think about how you react to a situation, says a lot about you as a person.
Absolutely.
You know, and you can even prove it to yourself, like, wow, I am better than that. Or I can beat this. Or I can fight through this. You know, because like I said, when you react instantly at the beginning of the problem, hundreds of thoughts are going through your mind.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like you have a storm going in your own head. But sometimes taking that slow ride, like you were saying, perspective can bring that benefit of peace.
Yeah.
Even in the middle of the storm.
Right. Right. And because you can't control people, maybe that peace for yourself is what is needed. That other person or that situation that may involve people, most times it does, because you can't do anything about it, you have to find that peace and healing for yourself.
Yeah, and that's, you know, I think I referenced this in a few episodes ago, or maybe even last episode, like, wait, sometimes you have to be selfish. And it's not a selfishness out of pride or, you know, whatever kind of emotion you can equate to that. But when you take that moment of selfishness and you put yourself aside for your own sake and let time work its way through you, it can help you in the long term. That's really where it is. It might not in the short term because, you know, you got things going on around you. But in the long term, you know, you can sit a month, 2 months, a year down the road and be like, wow, it really, taking that time helped. You know?
Yeah, because it can help to better you. In the moment, you don't think that.
No.
But in the long term, I think when you step away from it and you look after a while, you'll be like, wow, not only did I come through it, but I'm better for it. And it is self-reflection. Like Brian said, it's not about being selfish. You need that for you.
Yeah.
Because yes, it makes you a better person, but you can't be driving down that road till you eventually hit a wall. You just can't. And so eventually you're going to have to stop and say, you know what? I need this for me. Mm-hmm. And that's just a good place to be. It really is. In the last episode, we had talked about, 2 episodes back, we talked about existing versus living. And then in the very last episode, we talk about purpose and destiny. And I think when I bring up time as being our topic tonight, I think that also reflects on living and destiny. Because when we talk about time tonight, it brings the living part into it in the way of when time is your friend and you look at it from time has a way of being your friend, it helps you to find a way to live again.
Yeah.
You know, again, we don't want to just exist, we want to live. So when you say that time has a way, it can help you to find a way to live. Because and bringing this part into it too, with the purpose and destiny, I think the living also brings in the destiny part of it. Because when you finally learn how to live, you are living out your destiny.
Helping you to live finds your purpose, and your purpose fulfills your destiny.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that, and it's all comes together. And that's why I was saying earlier, I think with the podcast being what it is tonight, when we talk about time, it's brought all those podcasts that we've done to bring those things together. So when we think of time, we often think of it as working against us. But I believe everything comes to you just at the right time. You know, when you're going through that storm, like you said, you think a few things like, I don't think I can do this. This is awful. I don't think I can make this. You think things like, how do I make this better? Because nobody wants to be in that, right? Let's face it. As people, we want comfort. We are creatures of comfort.
Yeah.
We don't want to deal with the pain. We don't want to deal with the change. We don't want to deal with the differences and the feelings and the emotions and all the things that we might have to go through during those stormy moments. But everything does come to you at the right time. That's what I believe. Yeah. Because, again, time has a way. Do you believe that everything comes to you, Brian, just at the right time?
I can say recently there have been things that have happened in my bad situations where something has always come up to make it good again. Or at least help to cope with the situation.
Yeah.
And then help me find that peace where it was needed.
Right.
And a lot of it has to go with surrendering. Like, I always notice the hardest parts, and maybe some of our viewers can relate to this as well, but sometimes when I would react hastily, it would make the situation worse.
It can. Mm-hmm.
At least in my situation. Mm-hmm. But I found that when I just left it alone, mm-hmm. more peace would come of, people around me, people who would talk to me, and even some of the things that I would do. I'd be like, wow, hey, I'm not really focused on the bad anymore.
Right.
At least not to the degree that I was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when I say that I believe everything comes to you just at the right time, maybe we have to look at it from this perspective. Maybe things aren't falling apart, but maybe things are coming together. Because I believe in those moments, we learn who we really are.
Well, I think that goes into what I said a little bit ago, is like how you react to a situation says a lot about you as a person. Mm-hmm. And that can show something to yourself and to those around you.
Right.
You really gain perspective on yourself. Like, you're stronger than you think you are.
Right. Exactly. And Mom used to say that all the time. She said, you never know, because I'd always say to her, I don't want to go through this. I just want it over. And she'd always say, you never know how strong you are till you've gone through the storm. And the next time you're faced with another one, you'll realize just how strong you were. So it defines your character.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody likes it
Yeah. Nobody wakes up in the morning going to look for problems.
Right? But believe me, they'll find you. But, again, it's character, right? It's where you're going to stand in that storm. Are you going to be the person that's going to allow yourself to, become stronger and change? And sometimes in the moment, you're not thinking that way. You're thinking the worst. You don't want to go through it. You don't want to deal with it. But life will make you, or it can break you. Again, it's perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So time might be all we have, but maybe it's helping us to not just make a difference, but be the difference.
Isn't it interesting how all of these topics can both relate and circle back around?
Yep. It all came right back to where it was before. So this is the part where I kind of want to bring it all together, is time is a great teacher. It can bring you from, and I'm going to expound on this, because I say time is a great teacher, it can bring you from reason to reflection to revelation. And I know we've talked a little bit about that tonight, with time being a foe and time being a friend. But I think, again, it's perspective and it's choice. You're faced with things that you don't want to deal with, but you have to. And going through them, yes, makes you stronger. But when I talk about it can bring you from reason to reflection to revelation, this is what I'm saying. I'll give you an example. So I was in Nana's hospital room when she passed away. And the minute I walked out of her room, I thought, how can I live without her? I don't know how to live without her. Because we did everything together, Even when I didn't live close to her, I always knew she was there, so I'd call her, we'd talk, she'd always encourage me and these types of things. So for a long time, and we're talking over 3 years now that she's been gone, that was the reason part of this, is for a long time I kept asking why. The reason is why. Why did it have to be her? Why do I have to go through this? Why? I will tell you that living through that these last 3 years, I eventually had to stop asking the why, because life will leave you sometimes with more questions than answers.
It often does.
And I had to come to a place where that had to be okay. And I think I found my peace in that. It's being able to step away from that and come to the realization that, you know what, I may never know why, but you know what, that has to be okay. I had no control over it. I lived with a lot of regret, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, but there was nothing I could do. So I had to stop saying why. It happens. Bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people. It's life, So I went from reason to reflection. Reason was the part, again, like I said, is the why. The reflection was, now instead of asking why, I started asking what. So this brought me into the part of my healing, because now I wasn't asking why. I'm now asking, okay, what do I have to do to better this situation? Because the why was beating me down. The what was now bringing me into a different place, where I was saying, okay, what can I do to change this? What can this situation do to change me? There was nothing more I could do. I was tired of living with the regret. I was done. And with the what, I could say, okay, this was the time I could step back and look at it from a different angle. The revelation part of it took 3 years. Why do I say that? because that's where I sit today, is in the revelation of it. What is the revelation? It's the who. It's who I've become through this storm. If you'd have told me 3 years ago I'd be sitting here doing this, I'd have said you were crazy. Because the day I left that hospital room, I thought my life was over. I thought, there's no way. Like sitting here today saying that I'm encouraging people in the mess that I was in, how could I ever help anyone when I couldn't even help myself? So the revelation of it was, now this is who I am. Now I can help others because I've walked it. I've lived it. I've stepped away from it. But I'm hoping that it's bettered me to better others. And that's why I'm saying that time is a great teacher, because it can bring you from reason of why, revelation to what, or to reflection is what, and revelation is who. Now, in saying that, I just want people to understand this change of reason to reflection to revelation, this didn't happen overnight. This took 3 years. So I say that to say this: be kind to yourself. Be patient. Because people are going to say things to you, and I know this because of what I went through, that they're going to want you to rush through those times to get to that part of where they think you should be. Right? But everybody heals and changes at a different pace. I know others who have lost parents who, I'm not saying it didn't affect them, but it affects people differently, right? So some people can walk through the reason, the reflection, and the revelation in no time. Doesn't mean that they loved their parents any less than I did. Doesn't mean good or bad. It just means that people cope differently, right? So their healing process could be different. But you need to be patient with yourself, because where it took me a long time, it might not take you that long. But you know what? If it does take you long or longer, don't apologize for that.
Yeah, no, never do that.
Because you want to be the best of your revelation of who you are. Because it could be taking you to your destiny.
And I can even say that personally with the situation that I am still semi-dealing with. It's like like I told you before, when I reacted a certain way, I asked a friend of mine, I was like, should I not have said that? Should I not have done that? And you know what she said to me? She said, never apologize for feeling how you feel. Never apologize for you being yourself.
Exactly.
If that other person can't handle it, that's a them problem.
It is. It is.
Because in those kind of situations, and I'm only talking about me personally when I'm talking about this, but I'm hoping people can get inspiration from it, is that with this situation that I'm dealing with, I learned a lot about myself.
Yep. And hopefully that's what comes from it, right? Because when I went through all that with Mom, in the instance that I was just telling you, you do learn a lot about yourself. I never thought I could sit in a place that I'm sitting in today and be able to inspire you to walk through it. I didn't even want to talk about it. Anybody that would even mention it, I mean, you were there. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people say things to be mean. I just think they don't know. They don't mean to be malicious or hurtful. It's just they don't understand where you're at. And that's okay. But you have to step back from it and say, okay, it's okay that they're saying those things or being that way, but I need this time for me. Be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself, because it really it's okay to take that time and find yourself in all of that, because again, it's about learning to live, and I hope that that's not only what I'm doing, but that's what we're encouraging you guys to do, but also to find your destiny. If this is where it takes you, then great. Who knows where it can take you?
Yeah.
With the changes that you decide to make for yourself. And sometimes all there is time.
And I think that's where you need to find acceptance.
Oh, that's good.
Finding that time to bring yourself acceptance. Because of things being so far out of your control, sometimes just accepting can bring the time that continues to flow just that much more amount of peace.
Yeah. Yeah, acceptance, kindness, patience. I remember Dad always would say to me, Penny, be kind to people because you never know what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you never know where they're at.
I actually have a funny story about that. So I was in a voice chat with a bunch of people, and we were all playing, we were playing different games, but it was me, this one guy, and a girl who were all playing this game. And I noticed that the guy was being very quiet, a lot more than normal. But whenever he did talk, he was very snappy. I kind of shrugged it off. So we played for a couple more hours, and then the girl said that she was leaving. So then it was just me and him. And it was the same thing with just me and him. I would try to engage. He would either be silent or snappy. And I knew this guy. I know him. I know him personally. So after a few minutes, I was like, I didn't snap back and be like, dude, what's your problem?
Right, right.
Or, you need to smarten up or I'm leaving or whatever. I was like, I just said very calmly, I was like, what's going on, dude? He didn't say anything at first. And I said, is there something going on? Something you want to talk to me about?
Mm-hmm.
He just started breaking down.
Yeah.
And some people, you don't realize that their anger that they push out is just, it's like it's the dam breaking before the flood.
Right. Yeah, you don't know where people are at.
You don't know where people are at. People
Right.
can bring that sadness out in anger, rage, frustration, anxiety,
Yep.
Sadness. They can bring it out in many different ways. And you don't know the storm cloud that's hanging over people
Right.
sometimes.
Right. You don't know where they're at. And that's what Dad would always say, because there's different levels, too, of where you're at. Like, let's take grieving. People go through different levels of anger, sadness, accepting, and I know all those levels because I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm saying maybe part of it too tonight isn't just speaking to you out there, that I'm saying be kind to yourself, but also be kind to others, because we don't know where they're at. And, Dad would always say, there's always somebody out there, Penny, that's going through something worse than you.
Mm.
You don't know the burden they're carrying. And I think that's a lot of why I enjoy the podcast so much, is one of the purposes of many that you and I have brought out in this is I want people to be more aware. There's not enough kindness. There's just not enough, how can I say it? I don't want to say sympathy, more empathy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you always have to say something or say the right thing or do the right thing. Maybe it's just a smile. You never know what it can bring to someone's day. And believe me, there are people out there that have it worse than you.
Sometimes the smallest gesture can brighten somebody's day up a whole awful lot.
Yep, absolutely.
I can't remember if I ever told this story, but this is a good example. It's amazing how these stories are popping up. But one last thing for a story. I went to a local grocery store to go get some food one day, and I went through the register, and the cashier didn't seem angry, but I could tell they were down. Mm-hmm. So I was, I paid through I paid for my groceries, and right before I walked out, I couldn't obviously talk to them because there was a line behind me. And after I said, after I gave them my money and they gave me my groceries, I looked at them and I just said, I don't know who you are, but I'm going to keep you in my thoughts today.
Yeah. Yep.
And he legit started tearing up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's amazing how something so small,
yep,
brought like he smiled at me after. He teared up, and then he wiped his tears away and he said, "Thank you."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because there's enough hate, there's enough division. Really, it's tiresome. I think, maybe this is just me, but I think it's easier to hate than it is to love.
Being hateful, to me, from what I see from people, it's a shield. It's a way to shut people out.
That's good.
It's a way to defend yourself. And it's that defense is not in a way of like to keep me from getting hurt. It's a way to keep people from getting in.
Yeah, it's easy to hate.
It's very easy to hate.
Because it's all there is around us. And I think that, again, is the podcast that when we were talking about of just not to make a difference, but be the difference. That's being the difference, is knowing how to not only give hope and encouragement and lift people up, but to bring more happiness and more love into this world. Because you don't have to go very far to find it, to find the hate and the division. It's there. If that's what you want, you can find it. But, being the difference, maybe that's what it is about, is just stepping back and maybe looking at someone else's situation instead of always reflecting on your own. Maybe that's it.
And sometimes and it goes with what we said earlier about it shows a lot about your character, but sometimes being nicer can show the strength that you don't get from being angry. Because like you said, being angry is easy. So it's like, if you can show kindness, to me, somebody that shows kindness is much stronger than somebody who shows anger.
Yep, exactly. So I hope tonight you realize that even though sometimes all there is time, that it is okay. It's not always against you. Time can be a great friend. It can help you to reflect on your life. It can bring great healing and great change. It can bring you from reason to reflection to revelation.
Yeah.
But be patient and be kind to yourself and others. And know that no matter how long it takes you, maybe it will take you 3 years or longer to get there, but you will get to your purpose, your destiny, and learn to live again. I guarantee that will happen. Because like I said, if you'd have seen me 3 years ago, you'd be like, there's no way. But it can happen.
Sharing that experience of pain from where you came from, that can say a lot to some people.
Yeah, because everybody's hurting somewhere in their life, whether they have control over that situation or they don't. But you know what? Yes, you can live through the pain, but find that support, find those people, or find that thing that can help you to heal.
Yeah.
That was the reason for the podcast. Wasn't just for us to find a way to heal through this, but to help others to heal through it. And
Absolutely.
Again, we really encourage you to reach out to us and let us know your stories. Let us know where you're at. Let us know how you came through it. I want to know. You want to know, Brian?
Yeah.
How you guys dealt with certain situations and how you came through it and where you are today. How has it made you a different person? Has it made you better? Are you now the difference, not only to yourself, but to others because of where you've come? And that's what we're really hoping for.
Absolutely.
So tonight we're going to wrap it up. There will be a part 2 because we didn't even touch on it. So next week we'll bring you another podcast. Again, share, like, subscribe, notify, look at the different platforms. Again, our email is giveemhec@gmail.com. That's GIVEMHEC@gmail.com. And do you have any other things to add, Brian, before we close it tonight?
No, I think generally I'm all set. I do want to say one little thing. Whenever you find yourself in a position where you feel you can't handle something, and I'm only saying this because I know it doesn't work for everybody, but for me, and I think a lot of other people, the best thing to do is find that place to hide. And what do I mean by that? I don't mean hide like in fear. Find that place to take shelter from the storm, even temporarily, to help yourself get in focus. And that doesn't mean a physical place to hide.
Right, like don't go to the mountains.
Right.
You might get eaten by a cougar.
I mean, like, Find that thing, that person, that place that helps you find peace.
Right.
I encourage that because for me, that's what helped.
Yeah.
So if you feel that you're the kind of person that needs to step away,
Yep.
do not apologize for that.
Right.
Do not be afraid to do it.
Yep.
If somebody gets mad at you for doing that, like I said earlier, that's a them problem.
It is. Yep.
And it's not selfishness.
Nope.
It's preservation. Because at the end of the day, if you don't take care of yourself,
Who's gonna? And then you're not a help to anyone else. And that's the thing. We're a team. We have to support and help each other.
Absolutely.
And that's how we help each other to grow. That's how we help each other to heal. And it's okay. Yep.
But that's all. That's all for
Okay.
me.
All right. Another great podcast. Again, reach out. Help us to hear from you and to reach others. And again, have a great evening, and we'll see you next week.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.